So, Siddhant, did you know a couple of years back, Metallica teamed up with this distillery to make a drink where what they did is after the drink was made to slow age the drink in after the drink was in the barrel, they put it in the warehouse and they played Metallica songs at high frequency and low frequencies so that the drink was exposed to music continuously. And it is called a slow maturing process. Let me see what it's called. It's called the sonic maturing process. All right. This is real. This is a real thing. And the drinks were exposed to Metallica songs for the longest time, and the distillers told that this is going to affect the taste of it. Okay, so what is your take on this, and do you think this is a marketing gimmick or this actually works?
I feel like exposure to any kind of vibration is not going to affect its taste, but more the way it's prepared and the way it ages. That's about it actually, right? And it'd be interesting to know how they actually validated this, how they verified this. And I'm inclined to say that, if they tested this in different circumstances and they published studies, then maybe okay. Otherwise, it's just a marketing gimmick, in my opinion.
Yeah, my follow-up question was, if not Metallica song, what if you played I'm a Barbie Girl, and will it really make a difference?
Probably, yes. The same effect. Yeah, unfortunately. But that won't be a great marketing gimmick.
Welcome to episode 2 of Steam Theatre. Today we have Siddhant Prasad as our guest. Let me tell you about Steam Theatre. This is a podcast where we get industry experts from STEM and STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. We want to tell all our viewers how this is useful in your day-to-day life when you're working, and how it's going to be useful forever when you're working. For our first question, of course, tell us all about yourself.
I started working at the age of 24. I went through a very stereotypical educational journey, but my appreciation for the subject, I think, only grew after I did my master's degree in product design and manufacturing in the Indian Institute of Science. Really privileged and lucky to get into the institute. I think I got an all India rank of about 70 or something in the design exam. And at that point of time, I was more interested in learning about product design and industrial design specifically. I think it was 1 year into my program when I realized that this is not what product design is all about. My appreciation for product development as a whole, the full life cycle of it, that's why my interest into that started increasing. We had a lot of projects where we would conceptualize, design, engineer from industrial design to mechanical design, everything from scratch. And then we also had to develop a prototype at the end of it all. So if I had to describe my educational journey, I think most of it was a lot of confusion early in school, not knowing what I wanted to do. But as soon as I started interacting with professors who I admired, peers who were really talented, that helped me. I think that was the point of time where my curiosity peaked a lot for the subject. And having hands-on experience on product development, developing prototypes from scratch, working with vendors, working on specific problems in the product development cycle. That's when I realized that I want to work for an organization like Eaton. Eaton is an engineering company. It's a manufacturing company. We're in the aerospace, vehicle, e-mobility, and electrical divisions. So all these markets are expansive. We have products in almost every space, but we mostly supply to original equipment manufacturers. 2 years into my experience in Eaton is where I started seeing what I'm interested in, and physics became one of my passions. Like understanding physics more in depth became my passion at that time. Of course, I had the background in design as well because I studied minors in industrial design, but I soon realized that there's more to it. The bottom line is you learn to value science education more when you start applying it, uh, and have hands-on experience with it, and that only happens with projects.
Pointing out to something we spoke earlier to the viewers, me and Siddhant were just chatting about rocket propulsion system as a warm up before this podcast. And I mean, we go into the details, but the key takeaway is Siddhant explained some very, interesting concepts in a very simple way. We spoke about uh, jets going at different altitudes and the effect it's going to have on the fuel pump, is in the fuel chamber, right?
Yeah, you try to take this bottle up into about maybe like 7,000, 8,000 meters, and then you suddenly drop altitude like by 2,000 meters, right.
Yeah. So basically, it's all pretty intricate scientific details, which Siddhant explained in a very simple way. So, Siddhant, I'd like to ask you how important you think it is for us in our schools and colleges. I think more so in colleges, for concepts to be, broken down and explained in a more simple fashion, so that people are genuinely interested.
A good place to start is with magic for me, in my opinion. Like if you look at magic, there is so much of science involved, because everything can be explained, but everything doesn't seem to be explainable. Like, it almost seems like your eyes are lying to you, right? There's so much of perception. So you can break. I would hate to break the illusion of magic for children, but so I think the importance of breaking the illusion per se is that whatever looks hard to understand or seems amazing to look at can always be explained through science. And you have to break it down into smaller phenomena. You have to break it down uh, to its fundamental concepts, and then there's the aha moment that you see in the eyes of children, right? So I think that's where I would start. Like, start with science and then encourage children. Sorry, start with magic and encourage children to break down the magic to scientific fundamentals, so that they can question every time they see something that they can't explain. Very important to break down everyday phenomena, break the illusion.
So, moving on to the next question, you said about you like to see the entire product cycle of a product being made. So that brings us to one of the most interesting startups or ventures from Bangalore called Ather,
Mhm.
which is one of the foremost in EV two-wheelers, and something from your field also, EV.
Right.
I think they have made a wonderful product which is going ahead well. How do you think we can make more of in India, make such good products anymore? And especially in the EV market, it's a really growing field. So, from your expertise in EV and product, what do you want to tell our viewers to make? How do we get more of Athers in India?
I remember Ather coming to IISC very early on in their product development journey, just to talk about their first few prototypes, right? They were trying to educate students about it. They were not there to recruit. They were just there to talk about the technology. And that is a starting point. First of all, you go to your biggest institutions in India and you talk about your product as a startup, and not be all secretive about it all the time. Yes, you can of course protect the IP, but you need to get the youth, the youngest engineers excited about what's coming. Uh, and back then, Ather had this vision, and they're still stuck to that vision. And now they've got vehicles on the road, right? So someone who witnessed those early days knows how much of work they have put in, right? So getting the youth excited about battery technologies, for example, that's the most important aspect of Ather, the vehicle. It's not the styling, it's not how fast it can go. it's about the battery technology. That's
All right, Siddhant. Now we come to the segment where we have some questions from our viewers. So the first question is from your education background. So we had gone to a school in Nagpur, CDS, and there were a lot of interesting questions from the students there about careers and how STEM is part of the careers. And at least two people asked me about IISC.
okay.
So if I had to tell a child from between 6th and 7th standard how STEM is important for them to get into IISC, what are the things they need to keep in mind and chart out or research before they go ahead?
At a very early stage, it's important to be a part of hobby clubs, be a part of sports activities, be a part of quizzes, right? You don't just get absorbed or pulled into your academics only, right? So it's when those fields cross over that you start appreciating what you learn in science more often. So I would say at a really early stage, appreciate what you're learning in class and try to see how it applies in the playground, see how it applies in your music class, see how it applies in your home science class. Not everyone has that privilege, but if you do have that privilege, that is where you start appreciating science more. And that's the kind of people that they want in IISc. They don't want like the number one top 10 ranks who cannot apply or think critically, right? You need to start thinking critically very early on. I wish I had done that really early on. To be honest, I felt like I started thinking critically very later in my life. That's when I started questioning everyone around me, including the elders in the family, right? All the belief systems. So very early on, try to think critically and start experimenting your ideas. Start trying to prove your ideas to people. And then everything else follows. You'll start learning for those entrance exams, and that'll be a piece of cake after you've established this curiosity and the need to keep answering questions, right? That is definitely what they're looking for in IISc, for sure. I remember when I went for my interview in IISc, I was carrying a box of prototypes and models that I had made, basically scaled down models of concepts I had in my portfolio, right? And I wanted to show them that I'm not just sketching ideas on my book. I'm also trying to realize them. And here's a small scale model, and this is how it would work. I steered the conversation into talking about that. And I was able to answer questions about that only because I thought so much about it. So I think that's where you try to stand apart, and you start, as soon as you start tinkering with stuff, you start experimenting with stuff, you have things to show people, you have things to demonstrate, and you have more specific questions asked to you, and you aren't just judged on your examination results. You're not just judged based on how well you speak, right? I think that's what they're looking for in an institute like IISc.
Nice. So you actually picked out all the keywords which we at Paper Crane Lab follow a lot: critical thinking, tinkering, making, breaking. So you covered everything without us even having to do any work. So that's very nice. Since we are in this growing space and learning all the time, what do you think is the importance of knowing what you don't know?
Wow. Or admitting that you don't know. This reminds me of, I think, a really old Neil deGrasse Tyson speech where he was answering a question from the audience about UFOs. And Neil was trying to say the word "you" in UFO is that means it's unidentified, right? And the human mind has this frailty that they will make arguments from ignorance when they don't know what it is, right? We all do it. We all make arguments from ignorance because there's this need, there's a lot of discomfort with not knowing something, right? But when you have said this is unidentified, then why would you go on to say, oh, that could be an alien spaceship, that could be from another planet. I think it's important to stop at saying, I don't know what this is. It's unidentified, but we should find out what it is, right? We should take samples and not just eyewitness anecdotes. I think it's okay to admit that you don't know things. As children, we hate admitting that. We want to be full of knowledge and trivia all the time, but we hate admitting not knowing. But it's that admittance gives you freedom. That's the first step to liberation. Like, it's after admitting that you don't know is when you start figuring out, how do I find out what is the truth? How do I measure things? How do I actually find evidence that is up to a certain standard, and not just, oh, I saw that, so it must be true. No, your eyes can lie to you. So you need better evidence. And kids need to learn that early on, and not just, not just ingest what is fed to them.
Next question from we got this on Instagram from one of our followers is for you. Do you find similarities between music and design?
Music and design. Well, of course, the way we perceive music and design is so subjective. Like, not everyone has the same taste in music and design. But what some people miss is that music and design, the way people respond to it can be formulated. You can figure out how certain sounds make people perceive the sound. You can figure out how certain patterns or colors make people perceive the sound, and people have been studying it for years, right? Which is why you see certain design language being used in marketing, on the streets, right? Everything has a certain intention, and the same goes for music and design.
So,
I
like
think,
using Helvetic as a font all the time, is it? Is it
I mean,
used
yes,
as
yeah.
studied? Yeah.
I don't know what exactly is the other studies going behind it, but
Mhm.
I'm sure there has
Yeah,
been
yeah.
enough
Mhm.
uh, research published on how the font has done historically, right? In
Mhm.
terms of effective communication. Even music, man.
Mhm. With the auto.
There's a reason
Mhm.
pop songs are popular,
Yeah.
uh, and the reason behind that is uh, every note and pitch or the distance between two pitches. Let's take a typical C note or a D note or a C and an E note in music, as we call it. It has a certain frequency attached to it, associated with it. And the distance between the two frequencies brings out a certain emotion in you, right? Uh, and these emotions are very universal. Feelings and emotions are super universal. It's so predictable. Humans are predictable. The point I'm trying to make is, people have observed this for years and years and years, that if I play two consecutive notes, people react to it the same way. And that's what you see in pop music everywhere. Like, you start dissecting pop music, you'll start hearing the same progressions. You'll start hearing the same two notes or three notes played in a certain sequence, because they are either catchy, jumpy, playful, and these are the words associated with that. And if not, you will hear that certain music that's very dark has a different, uh, we call them intervals, like the distance between pitches. They have different intervals associated with it, and that's why pop music has done well for so many years. It got popular because it is easy to digest. It brings out very simple emotions and feelings, and these are feelings that people want to feel again and again and again.
And we go to the last question for the podcast episode. tell us one of your fondest memory from the world of science when you're growing up, or
Oh,
now, or whenever.
I would say that the first time I built uh, a compact foldable electric scooter in college, that was the first time I finished a project from start to finish. And it was an aluminum frame bike with a battery pack and a motor in the wheel of the bike. And we had to demonstrate the working of this bike. And we horribly failed at it because we just had not considered very tall and heavy humans to ride the bike, aka my partner and my project partner. He's like 6 foot and easily weighs uh, half my weight more. And when I tested the bike, I was like, we have made this work. But when he tested the bike, uh, something cracked, something creaked, and we were panicking because we had a demonstration to do in like an hour, and we thought we had failed in spite of putting in months and months and months in work, right? And we thought that we would be criticized for the end result. But actually, on the day of the review, we had a jury, and all the professors were there. They came to see the vehicle, and it did not matter to them how perfect the end result was, but they wanted to see the journey. They wanted to see how we got to where we finally got to. And this was in their words, this was just prototype one, right? The first viable prototype. It goes through many iterations to get to where it can be out in the streets. And that was when I was like, wow, yeah, that's almost every product out there then. It must have failed many times before getting out there. Um, so that was a memory that stayed with me for a long time. And I think I stopped fearing failure. I still fear failure because it has bigger implications now in my professional capacity. But very early on, learning that it's okay to fail and at least document your lessons learned. Make sure that they don't happen again. Uh, yeah, that was my strongest memory for sure.
So very well summed up. Thanks so much, Siddhant. And we'll be shooting our episode 3 soon, and we'll put up the list of the guests, and you can ask them more questions. We had some lovely questions for our previous 2 guests. So keep a lookout on our page. And as usual, as the old saying goes, like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Thank you so much for having me.